One small step for man.
Hey, this is Luke. Big, medium, small. This episode is about shading. Look at each of these artists and think about light. This is Rembrandt. See that powerful light coming in from the left? Humphrey Bogart, film noir, beautiful separation of black and white. Seurat, painting on the beach in Spain. Frank Miller, comic book artist, absolute noir classic. Anders Zorn, beautiful, warm light. Edward Hopper, look at the difference between the block of the house and the Roll Hills. John Singer Sargent, look at that face, a square. Chris Van Allsburg, again, Chris Van Allsburg, gorgeous black and white contrast. Seurat, one of my absolute favorites. N.C. Wyeth, see the shadow, the kid standing in the shadow. Akira Kurosawa, all these guys are masters of light. Edward Hopper, again, looking down New York City street. All right, we're going to cut into the basics of shading now. I'd like for you guys to get these notes in your sketchbook, okay? I'm going to start out with a very simple gradation, just going from dark to light. See how I'm trying to get my hand to go in the same direction? I'm doing vertical strokes. It makes it cleaner. Later on, I'm going to go back and you'll see I've cleaned up the edges. I'll just erase those out. Okay. Now, this is the same gradation, except I'm using it to show a curve. I'm using it to show that the light is hitting more directly at the top of the curve and falling off as it goes down the curve. It's kind of describing form and space. Sort of our first in the Drawing Foundation series that starts with tone describing softly blended form. By softly blended, I mean not hard edge. In a couple minutes, I'm going to show you some hard edge form. So you see the dark part that I've got, and I'm very carefully moving my way up into the light. And again, gradating out into the light again. That little bit of edge there is called turning form. It's called the edge on the turning form. Shadow. Okay, and this is going to be the underside. So we were just dealing with gradations, now we're dealing with flat tones. This is just a middle, and the middle is going to go behind a dark, and it's going to show you a couple of things. One of them is, it's a whole category of design. Designing with just flat tones, we call that designing with mass. And you'll see in a lot of beautiful work, there's just a big portion of it is tone that doesn't show volume, it's just tone that shows color, or mass. It just shows an absence of light in some place. It's just a big shape of darkness. While shading with a pencil, it's all about a kind of weaving. It's like gently in and out, weaving. Working with a sharp pencil really helps. Going back and tidying up with an eraser. So here's a little character. And the point of him is to show you how shading looks when it's just shaded for mass. It's not shaded for volume. So let's say he's wearing a pair of dark pants. See how the pants don't have like a light side and a dark side? They're just dark pants. You give him some black shoes. See how this character has a shaded presence? He has like, feels like kind of part of a drawing. And it's not complicated shading. It's a little bit more like a coloring book, but it's still really effective. Okay, so a lot of times in teaching formal values, people start with a 9-part system. I like to, in my own practice of drawing and in working with people, working with drawing students, I like to start with a 4-part system. I like a dark, 2 middles, and a light. And I'm heavily influenced by the thinking of Howard Pyle, who was a really important teacher in the golden age of illustration, taught N.C. Wyeth and Norman Rockwell and people like that. Anyway, he basically has this essay where he says all the significant painting masterpieces of all time are essentially created with 4 values. So, who am I to question Howard Pyle? A thing that's nice about it is it's kind of easy. You just have a dark, 2 middles, and a light. So as dark as your tool will go, that's it. And the white of the paper. Okay, I'm going to show you the moves for shading a sphere. See that dark? That's going to become really important to us. The word is going to be occlusion. And occlusion is a space that light can't get to. It's like if you put your fingers together and you see there's a dark line, it's because light can't get in there at all. And so that little space of that darkness is occlusion. And we use that all the time in drawing. It's like it adds all kinds of accent and quality to our line. Like when we're practicing line work, basically, a lot of times we're using the notion of occlusion. See how the left edge of this sphere is a tiny bit lighter than as you move in just a little bit further? Okay? So that little lightness on the lower left edge is reflected light. It's the ground bouncing light back up into this volume and making a reflected light. And then you see that darkness, the first darkness moving away from the reflected light. That's called core shadow. And it's kind of the big dark part of the shadow. We move out of the core shadow into halftone. And then you see I've got the white of the paper. So when I'm shading this, I'm going for, you're kind of getting there when you start getting a sense of dimensionality. The thing starts feeling like it pops off the page. So see how I'm labeling the tones? See how I give that guy a 2? So the reflected light is lighter than the core shadow. And the 4, the black, that's for my occlusion. That's for my shadow accent. If you've shaded something and then you start outlining it, that outline is called a holding line. And it's very common in a lot of illustration that you put in a holding line. It makes the effect more graphic. If you're doing something more representational or realistic, you don't use a holding line because it doesn't really visually happen. It's more of a way to create emphasis than it is actually a realistic optical effect. So I'm just adding a dark, and I'm going to add a couple of flat masses behind this sphere. What I want to demonstrate is the combination of volume and mass. So volume is the sphere, mass is the flat shape. Holding lines. Kind of cleaning things up, making my diagram a little better. Just diagramming out for you guys what tones I'm using. Okay, so this is like if I took a ribbon and instead of smoothly letting it bend around, I just made tight, square, blocky folds. And here's a cast shadow hitting an object. Here's a cylinder, shading a cylinder. Sorry for going so fast on those. Just trying to get this video going, trying to keep it going. Okay, so this is the work of Seurat, the famous pointillist, and we're gonna do a rough copy so that we can learn from this guy. So I'm gonna block in the shape of his jacket, and you can see I'm using straight lines, and what I'm basically going to be doing here is making a diagram of the value schema that Seurat designed. I'm not at all worried about accurate representation. I'm just looking to demonstrate for you guys and to understand for myself what are the compositional dynamics, the value dynamics that Seurat is using in this piece, and how is it that I can help you guys understand too. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to take on his jacket. And when I look at his jacket, it's just a big black mass. Meaning, I don't see gradations of value in his jacket. All I see is like a flat tone. And so I'm just going to fill this area in as flat as I can. Again, it helps a lot to have a nice sharp pencil. Another thing that helps is to let your attention stay one place at a time. Like just try to do one thing and do it well. Don't worry about the overall piece. Just thinking about just that little bit of the jacket. Now when I'm looking at the hair, again, I'm seeing mostly a flat shape, like it's just a single flat darkness. I'm not going to be able to get the pencil to make that darkness in one go. So with the pencil, it's a weaving process. Layering up. So at this point, I'm taking on his face, and what I'm wanting to show you guys is that I'm going to think about the face. If you look back at the original drawing, and I'll bring it up in 1 second, but if you look at it, you can see that it has the quality of a sphere. It has a gradation that's working its way up towards the light that's above his head. So you see me thinking about the sort of roundness and turning up to the light like I would on a spherical volume. So now I'm going to talk about his hand. I'm going to shade his hand. And his hand looks to me like a blocky volume. And so you remember when we were doing our earlier shading demonstration, I showed you the flat paper folded. This is very much like that. So it's got a darker side and a lighter side. And this line in between, it's kind of a hard line. Okay, I'm thinking about the background, and if you look at the background it's kind of all atmosphere. And what I'm seeing in the background is I'm seeing a gradation. I'm seeing a sort of two-directional gradation. We're gradating down from dark towards light around the figure. And this middle area is kind of light. And then as we go this way, it kind of darkens. Very much like on my linear development, things become more defined over time. Okay, see how dark the beard is? See how dark the hair is? That's it for that piece. Notice the value design. Nice areas of dark, light. The next piece that we're going to work on is going to be a Rembrandt portrait. So here's the piece. That's his self-portrait. Just going to kind of quickly set it up. So it's a sort of repeat of last time. Like you see how I just blocked in the shape of his shirt and the shape of his head. So his shirt looks to me like a flat black shape. And it unifies itself with a countertop that he's standing near. It's like one big black shape. So I'm just trying to get this area. It's literally like working in a coloring book. I'm just trying to get it as clean as I can. And you're looking at it really zoomed in. So this is what's going to happen in the shirt that's underneath the coat. You see the transition? It's just like a flat gradation. And now his palette, I think that his palette is just a flat tone. So you see off on the side, I'm going to draw just a square with a flat tone. And if you compare those two, you see how the one that's above, you see how it shows volume and the other one just shows color? Like the volume is made by the variation of light and dark. But the palette is just a darkness. So working up from underneath his head on his chest, there's a cast shadow. See, that's a cast shadow. So you see how it forms a kind of a hard edge. And there's the cast shadow. Now we'll just sketch that cast shadow in. Okay, so his face, again, I'm gonna work from a kind of a sphere. So when I'm working from a sphere, I've got the core shadow. You see how there's a dark towards the middle and then a reflected light on the right edge? You see on his face, you see the dark in the middle, like right along the shadow edge, and then the reflected light as it goes a little further. So here I'm sketching in and leaving the reflected light. Here's a diagram of his hair on the right-hand side. There's going to be some occlusion where it comes up against the face. There's going to be a little area of darkness that can't get any light. And towards the left, it would be fair to have some reflected light. Now that. So that's a mass of hair, a volume of hair on the left side of his face. And the light is hitting it from the left-hand side. So again, you see the reflected light. So in here, you're going to have light, you're going to have shadow, you're going to have occlusion, and you're going to have a reflected light. Okay, so that's the shadow. You see how I have light, shadow, and occlusion there? His hat, if you look back at his hat, you'll see that it's very much a blocky form. It turns like really instantly. Kind of a light shadow there. The whole tone of the hat is white. And now I'm just sort of risking a detail. See the hat? See the blocky shadow on the hat? The last thing really to consider on this is the background, what's going on, and it's just a wall that has a wash of light. And the wash of light has some gradations. Okay, this is the last piece we're going to take on. This is by N.C. Wyeth. Again, I'm blocking in the major shapes, kind of drawing with straight lines. It's how I was taught to draw while making a tone copy. I know that we've been working on mannequins that have all these shapes, and now I'm just using these straight lines to do block-ins. But you'll see the volumes get built into this. It's just a little bit of a different process. This process is more Spanish, and the process that we've been working on so far has been kind of Italian, kind of anatomical based. But you see how the arm here is a cylindrical volume, the hand a square volume. So starting with the head again, the overall volume of the head is going to be cylindrical, and then it's going to have details. The details are going to be like a carved in spot for the eyes and for the nose and the cheekbones. So see how his hair has, at that left edge, it has a blocky turn. It's like not a soft edge turn. The hair is a sort of medium value, But then it's got that blocky turn, just like that. There's the blocky turn. So here's his jacket. Now working up from, you see that little mark that I just put down, that little V? So working up from there, it's very much his spherical form going up to his shoulder. And you'll see me gradating up towards the light. So even this arm is participating in this gradation towards the light. So this whole volume in here is all gradating towards the light side. The right side of his arm, it's a cylinder, and the right side of his arm is going to drop into total blackness. And in this artist's work and N.C. Wyatt's work, he frequently makes his shadows kind of blocky. He doesn't favor a lot of smooth transitions. That's kind of a style move on his part. It makes his drawings feel heavy and like they're carved in stone or something like that. It's a nice effect. Yeah, the shirt, again, is a gradation from left to right. You see the lightness on the collar over on the right-hand side. This is his jacket that he's like wearing a suit jacket underneath. And the color of it is darker than the color of the shirt. And then it has a tone pattern on it. But you'll see it's lighter than the shadow that's inside the overcoat. Okay, the forearm, look at it. It's a cylinder. See how there's dark around the two sides and light in the middle? And how it's running the length of the form? Classic cylindrical shading. Down to the hand. Again, a box form. Three values distributed around a box form. In the case of his hand, I think I just leave it 2 values. See there? See the darkness that's captured in the inside? Like if you think about his coat, the overcoat, it's kind of like a cylinder that we're seeing into. And so there's a lot of cast shadow, but like that area between his knees, that's going to be total blackness. And I'm just trying to cover some ground now and fill it in. Okay, the right side of his coat, again, it's going to turn up into a volume that's very much like a sphere. So when you're looking at values and you see them changing, you see them lightening or darkening in a really smooth way, that's communicating to you that the form is turning in a really gradual way. And when you see values turning in harsh ways, like in ways that are abrupt, that means that the form is has box-like shape. And the pants are just black pants. And so because they're so dark, they're going to read like masses. They're going to read like flat value pattern. I'm just adjusting a little bit, going and saying like, how can I make this a little bit better towards the end? Clearly the shadow on his face is darker. See how I took and made that part of the head a kind of smooth value transition? All right, guys, that's it. Quick review. I think that these are the main tool set that you need to get started with shading. Vermeer was called the master of light. He's been a favorite of mine for a long, long time. Look at the head. Wow. Talk soon, guys.